This week on the show, we have drk29, founder of Outer Heaven Network, a Twitch channel dedicated to Metal Gear and Kojima games since 2009.
I'm sure I'll piss a lot of people off.
Hell yes, I'm ready for it. You're not doing it right if you're not pissing somebody off.
Yeah. This whole week, I've been off of social media when I've been on the clock, right? And so by the time I got to my phone on Discord on like Monday, they were like, oh yeah, like DRK, that guy, he also messaged us and he wants to come on. And we booked him. I was like, yo, do you know what you might have just done? And I didn't mean that as an indictment on anything. I just you can talk about it, but
I'm just going to say, I think we're going to agree a lot because I saw your tier list and I was like, all right. Yeah, this is okay. I don't really have anything to say about it.
All right, cool. I have the correct opinion.
It's very important to have the correct opinion. Too many people out there have the wrong opinions.
Hey, I'm Fingers.
hey everyone, this is Days Ahead.
And I'm Nitroid. You're listening to the Kojima Frequency.
But in all seriousness, I do believe that it's important to have an informed opinion. Now, let's make a distinction between, obviously when we're just joking when we say correct opinion. You can feel however you want if you have the information. Otherwise, part of the reason that I stream is I want to get the information out there. You know how many people we get that I explain like things about Raiden's origin or, M4's depression and everything. And then like, oh, I never thought of it. Oh, I never noticed, but now that you mention it. So it's nice to kind of open the door to some people's views on the series. They don't have to necessarily agree with me, of course, but it's nice to get the word out there. Look, this was done probably because Kojima felt this way about this and that. And they're like, oh, I had no idea. And at one point,
Go ahead.
Sorry. So at one point, I was also like that. But back when I started streaming now, 11 years ago, late 2009. I didn't have myself quite a complete view of the series as well. And I just thought, just take whatever comes out of Konami releases and whatnot, just accept it for what it is. And when people used to ask me, what's your favorite Metal Gear? I said, oh, I don't know. I just think of it as one continuous, timeline or story that just one continuous thing, like a movie with multiple sequels, just one story. I can't pick a favorite. And then through the community, through streaming, through doing research, finding interviews, listening to making ofs and whatnot, and meeting a lot of, not important, but because admittedly I didn't meet a lot of people on the production side of the series, but a lot of interesting people who had things to share and did their research. I've come to appreciate the whole thing differently and look at the games differently. And I definitely have favorites.
It's good that you're doing that too, because it's getting really, really hard to find older information these days. And the Internet Archive is only going to take you so far. I mean, we're well past the age of fan sites, and it's pretty much, official websites that haven't taken articles down, official, social media accounts, large gaming news blogs who may have written an article and didn't take it down, and the Internet Archive if you're lucky. And that's it. Oh, and the Metal Gear Wiki.
Always reliable.
Yeah. For example, Kojima's blog obviously got taken down from Konami's website. There's mirrors of it, I believe, but it's not as easy to tell people, go look for this thing on Konami's website anymore. And actually, one of the first things that really prompted me to do research and to get more invested in this was one of the articles from the Snake Soup. I always have to sort of thank the guys over at Snake Soup for getting me initiated in getting into the rabbit hole.
Shout out Snake Soup.
What article was it?
I believe I don't remember the exact title.
I'm putting you
but-
on the spot. Sorry.
I haven't gone back to it in ages now, but it was definitely a Metal Gear Solid 2 related article. And also, I don't know if you guys remember, probably seen it. There was a picture floating around, I think V on 4chan, that had the big and picture of Raiden in the middle, which basically briefly described that Kojima was disappointed all of his fans really just wanted to be action heroes and cared about playing a snake. That picture really resonated with me and got me into doing research as well. And as for the Snake Soup article, oh boy, I couldn't tell you the exact title. Yeah, I should have prepared this.
You're good.
But yeah, I'm curious now. It was definitely an MGS2 related article, a Raiden related article.
They did have that video they did. Oh man, what was the name of that video special that they put out about Metal Gear Solid 2? I can't remember. But they had this sort of like, I think it was like 15, 20 minutes long, sort of a, long form analysis on Metal Gear Solid 2.
The reality of Metal Gear Solid 2?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what I remember, but you're talking about an article.
Yeah, I would have to dig a little deeper. I mean, they've got analysis going on there. I'm actually kind of looking. Oh, you know what? I'm trying to click some links right now, and like you're saying, some of them are gone.
Yeah, short of the archives, it's really difficult to find a lot of old materials. And it's also a matter of a lot of the times when people would have conversations about these things and they would share what they know and where they found it, those conversations were happening in forums that are completely gone now.
For me, it was the myth articles. That's what got me on the site. I think I remember looking them up it was like the hair conversation with if Solid Snake's hair was brown or blonde in the briefing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right.
The myth article, yeah.
Because Shinkawa made an offhanded comment one time, and everybody took it seriously.
Yep. So there's an article called Metal Gear Solid 2, Get Over It.
Oh, yeah, that's I just linked it.
Oh, you did? Oh. Yeah, that sounds about right. And I also link that article about Snake's hair color all the time. You wouldn't believe how many people believe that Snake dyed his hair at the end of the briefing, and I'm just one when he specifically just asked for scissors.
Lighting.
Because it's got a color filter, and people don't understand color filters, apparently.
Yeah, I've had to explain, why is his hair blonde? You know, we get all these people coming in and saying, why is his hair blonde?
Yeah.
Like, because you wouldn't be able to see anything if it wasn't.
Yeah, I've had that argument many a time on the Solid Snake page, and I just link them to that article just every time. It's like, I'm just gonna not waste time here, and just, here you go. So I'm thankful for the Snake Soup for sure.
Oh, yeah. Some of their MGS4 articles as well. Actually, we had a lot of fun on stream doing the B&B story generator, where you can just change the name, the location, and the animal and create your own B&B story. And we had people on stream like coming up with things that I will not repeat here. But yeah.
So I wanted to ask you a question. This is our 29th episode, and you mentioned to me that the number 29 holds some significance for you. Can you tell me, like, what is that?
Oh, it's nothing too special. It's just that I have 29 in my nickname, obviously. And you know how most people like...
Oh, right. Yeah. I mean, that's an obvious one, but...
Catch that, Nitro.
I'm having a day, okay?
Yeah, I was going to ask that, but in a way I was going to be like, why have you had like 29 in your name? I've been watching you for
that would be the better question.
Yeah. Okay, so people always put their birth year in their like emails or nicknames, right? I was not born in 1929. However, I sort of broke away from that and put the day instead of the year. So I'm also currently 29 years old, and I was born on August 29th, which is dangerously close to Kojima's birthday, actually.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's really all there is to it. But, it started becoming a little bit of a joke. Like, people come in and say, what did you do with the other 28 DRKs? So, yeah, I just a little coincidence that I noticed Three Dogs episode was number 28. And, like, yeah, that'd be cool if I could get 29th episode.
Well, we're happy to accommodate.
Yeah, that's actually amazing that you guys got me on board so quickly. I did not expect it.
Funny enough, it was kind of like retroactively good timing, because Nitroid did that whole thread about proto versus meta fans, and
That's
then
great
yeah,
timing.
it seemed like you two really bounced off of those ideas or those concepts rather.
Yeah, you've been talking about this whole proto meta thing for years now, Nitro. I know, like we've had that conversation many times.
Yeah, and I haven't said much about it because I wasn't sure if it was lame or not.
I've always thought it's been like your like thesis, man. I've been like, man, that's actually a pretty good way to like look at this series and at least like how the fandom engages in it,
Yeah, and I don't think it applies in many other areas, but like specifically Metal Gear. And just to be clear, because I've seen some pushback on it because they're like, well, you can appreciate both and not like only like one, like that's not the point. No,
of course. Yeah.
The point is that this is a sliding scale for your personal preference on what you find more interesting. If you find them equally interesting, then you've got the slider in the middle. It's a gradient of sorts. So
it's like sexuality. Sorry.
You're right.
Keep going. I'm a metasexual, y'all.
I was like moderate. I was right in the middle when I took the Snake Soup's little quiz, so I don't know.
Oh yeah, I meant to take that.
Proto gang.
So for anybody who doesn't know what I'm talking about, the premise is this. I have a theory that there are two approaches to enjoying Metal Gear that fans tend to have. By no means an absolute. This is just my pet theory. That there are what we're going to call proto-fans and meta-fans. Proto-fans tend to like the story more literally, at face value. They like the characters, the plot, all of these narrative elements for narrative's sake. And, it's not so much about the metaphors or the symbolism or the meta-narratives. It's more like we like the story. We want to know what happens to our favorite characters. The meta-fans are less interested in the literal aspects and more interested in the meta-narrative aspects, the symbolic aspects. Like, what ideas are being explored here? What's Kojima trying to say about whatever topic he's getting in on? Whether it's society or whether it's his fan base or his history with the franchise. Like, those are more interesting. So some people are dead smack in the middle. I kind of lean into the meta side. Like, that's more interesting to me, and the plot stuff kind of loses me at times, I didn't say this in the thread on Twitter, but I'll say it here. If we had to make an assumption as to where Kojima would sit on this scale, given his regular disregard for his own canon, and the fact that he's very open about that, like, he will just straight up say, yeah, I changed some details because I wanted to write something else. I would say he kind of leans into the meta more, but maybe that's not for me to say. What do you guys think?
I mean, for me, like as a proto, I think
protosexual. Sorry.
Why are you making it sexual? All right.
Making it weird.
Yeah,
it rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, protosexual, metasexual, I guess.
Oh wow, how to scare off like your heroes in 2 weeks.
I think the story does all like come together in a way that it all works. I mean, there's been tons of retcons, and like we've talked about before, Survive retconned itself, but I don't know. He wasn't involved in that, but I don't know. It all makes all the canon stuff lines up for me. I think the retcons that he didn't like the one thing that for me was like the Gray Fox era, like when Big Boss met him and stuff. Like apparently some of that was just completely changed around, but the rest of it's there.
There's some stuff.
It's funny because I know that we're speaking to this from like a narrative perspective, talking about sort of the meta themes versus like what you kind of see on the screen, if you will. And in some ways, I kind of see that parallel to like the actual gameplay in a sense that I find that I'm not going to say it, the meta people, they seem to call out some of the more critical gameplay moments or the meta gameplay moments as like their memorable aspects of the series, like, you know, like how like Psycho Mantis reads your memory card, or how like, you know, you playing Raiden is supposed to be a message about, you know, finding your own way. Whereas I find like the Proto folks, I noticed that they tend to be the folks that are like, hey, you know, look how comprehensive this stealth gameplay is, for example. And obviously, you know, my experience might be different from others. It's not, you know, the end all be all. This conversation is not the end all be all. But once you kind of get that thought in your head about like meta versus proto, it's almost like, you know, when you're a hammer, everything you see is a nail. Like once you get Nitroid's theories in your head,
Yep.
you apply it to everything in the fandom.
Imagine being in my head, you know, just you don't want to do that.
So that was actually one of the questions that was asked to me in one of my interviews. Do you feel that you accrue meaning to things that don't necessarily have as much meaning, just because, like you said, when you're a hammer, everything is a nail? And I had to say, probably, because there's a lot of unexplored territory, and we can't quite get into Kojima's mind 100%. We have these little tidbits of interviews and things that he's said and written, and you know, lots of interviews and text that still needs to be translated even from Japanese, and things like the MGS2 Grand Game Plan. So we tend to pattern after the things that we do know are there for a reason. But especially this happens a lot with MGS2, we start to look at things in a way that, oh, is this supposed to be a callback to MGS1 events, for example, or is it just a coincidence? Example, Snake accidentally activating the C4 that kills Stillman, right? Is that supposed to be a callback to Snake accidentally activating Rex when he thought it was disabling it? It doesn't quite fit in the context, but it's one of the thoughts that came up to me because I started looking and then just those patterns of repeating things from MGS1. It doesn't fit as much because Snake's not the player anymore, and it's a little different. But he's, you know what, he still thought he was turning something off when he was actually enabling it. Because apparently having an on-off switch in Rex was too expensive. And so there are definitely things that are not confirmed, and we will never quite get into Kojima's mind, but we can pattern things and tell people about what we do know for sure. And then that's the fun part of it, is look at it yourself and compare what you see, what your opinions are. But for me, for this whole proto versus meta thing, I don't think that Kojima even stopped for a second, with maybe the exception of MGS4. You think about the events of the story rather than, I want to put this event in the game because I feel like this and I want to interpret it and I want to portray it in this way. So, like Nightford said, maybe it's not for us to say. I don't claim to get into Kojima's mind perfectly and understand him correctly, but from the feeling that I've been getting with all the things that are disregarded in the story, all the things that are there as commentary of how Kojima was feeling at the time, and don't necessarily make a lot of sense in terms of what I call it is like a spy movie, for example, of, you know, rescuing the hostages, saving the world. Certainly that's the context that things are portrayed in, but it's not, perhaps the face value story is not that great if you don't take into account why things are crazy. Because I see a lot of people disliking MGS2's story, for example, and that's perfectly understandable if you start thinking of it as just this badass spy movie that it kind of fails to be, but that's the point.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense if you take it at face value. It absolutely needs that additional layer, or it doesn't make sense.
This is a series that like builds on itself the more you play it, for sure. And like that's every time you replay it, you know, you're gonna definitely notice something a little different, just because your perspective on things will be like shifted a little bit. Like just me seeing this new thing that Bad Humans posted with the Ouroboros and the turtle with the world on its shell. Like, I know you had seen that before, Nitro, but I'd never seen that. And that, that just puts like a whole, different context on stuff.
I'm trying to find a tweet that somebody made. I wish I could find it because it sort of touched on something you said, DRK. It was how much of what we're interpreting is just chasing ghosts, because MGS2, it's fairly easy to pick up on what it's trying to say, what it's trying to go for, and that's helped in large part because much of it's been confirmed. It's the most obviously meta of the titles. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yes.
And so that sort of set a precedent that I wonder if fans have kind of latched onto that may not always be there. So when, most people are going to play Metal Gear Solid, most people who are tuned into the meta in Metal Gear Solid 2 will then play Metal Gear Solid 3, and it's fairly obvious that it's not as heavy on the meta as 2 was. I mean, there are elements there, but it's significantly dialed back.
I would say it's a lot more like on the nose too, when they do it. It's like,
right.
More like winking at the camera with it.
And then, 4 is just a rabbit hole to get into because it's very heavy on the meta, to the fault of the narrative even. And, okay, here's an example of what I mean. Peace Walker. Something I tend to think myself, and I've heard other people say, is that Peace Walker in a way feels like Kojima himself making peace with the series after MGS4 and sort of learning to have fun with it again. But there's nothing necessarily in the game that indicates that. There's nothing in any interviews that indicates that. It's just a feeling. So, how much of these interpretations are valid versus how much, I'm essentially just paraphrasing what you've already said, which is, how much of it's real and how much of it is just perceived that we're sort of just putting out there and projecting from our own views.
Yeah, but do we perceive enough that we can create patterns? Because when I talk about all the central themes of each game, which I really always tell people all the time, I wish these words were like in the title logo for each game so that people would start wondering, why? Why is this word here? Why is gene MGS1 and meme MGS2 and scene MGS3, and sense MGS4, and then obviously Peace Walker is peace. I want people to start wondering. I tell people, if you want to start doing research on what's, in the rabbit hole for this series, start by looking at each of these words and understand what they mean and how they relate to Kojima's state of mind for each game that he developed. And that's a good entry point.
There are those directors too that it's like everything they do is intentional. It's like every little detail and every little, then fans notice it years later and they're like, yeah, that was on purpose. And Kojima is such a person to do things like that, especially with all his ruses in the past and just the lengths that he's gone with stuff. It's like, if there's any series to go down a rabbit hole, this is definitely a good one to be, speculative about.
But then he'll do things like the flames behind Solidus when he accelerates right before the Harrier fight. And there's no meaning there other, he'll put things in that he just thinks are cool, like, oh, it was in Back to the Future, so I thought it was neat, so I put it in.
Oh, absolutely.
So, it's hard to tell sometimes, how much of this has some sort of thematic meaning and how much of it is just, I thought it was cool.
Because
MGS5 is a great example of this because of the style of the dialogue. It's very underspoken. In the cutscenes, there's very little said. The story is very understated. And you can liken that to a Phantom Pain. You can kind of twist your head around into a pretzel and say, okay, well, there's not as much obvious, blatant, overt narrative in MGS5 because we're supposed to feel a Phantom Pain for these things that are missing that were there previously in prior games. Or you could say, well, Kojima just really likes the movie Drive, which has the exact same tone.
Or Mad Max. But yeah. Let's never forget everything that we look at. We look at Kojima's motivations for putting things in games given by his feelings, his thoughts, his ideas, but also his extreme Hollywood fanboyism. So let's never forget that, like you said, things are just there to be cool, at least in a set percentage of times.
Yeah.
And it's easy to start agreeing meeting where there necessarily isn't too much.
Yeah, I think one. I mean, and this is something like I've talked about before, I think, but Python Selkin, those guys, they like really go into stuff, and it's like, I may not agree with like every little theory that they have, but like they are going in and like making those connections, and then at least it's then like plausible, at that point, and it's like, well, that could go either way, but it's a fun series to dive into, like the conspiracy side of things, or just like if you know the dev history, you can know where they were coming from.
Okay, I got to tell you that my only experience with Python Selkin is the theories that people bring in my chat coming from him, and what little thumbnails and video titles I see on my YouTube that I haven't clicked once. But now we're starting to delve into a little bit of tricky territory, because there's definitely those people who like to associate things in a way that is somewhat of a scoop, maybe, or sensationalism. It's
for sure.
I want that attention, that I think I connected these dots. So I try to first on stream, for example, when I do a Metal Gear Solid 2 in-depth run, go through all the things that we know for sure. Like I said, there's a lot that we know for sure. And then I go back and tell people, looking at all these things, then perhaps maybe this other thing, could be part of it as well.
Yeah.
Just know where I'm coming from with my assumptions. And actually, as much as we were talking about how it's hard to find older content now in terms of articles and interviews and stuff, this is actually, I've kind of had the opposite problem with MGS5 things, or MGS-V things, as you guys call it sometimes. I'm not really going to get into all of that.
Oh, no, we're going
let's not, please.
Yeah, let's not. I agree.
I don't give a shit what people call it, man. Call it whatever the fuck y'all want.
Yeah, I'm just here for a good time. I'm a moderate fan. I'm just here for a good time.
You know what? From now on, it's MGS Cinco.
Okay, perfect.
Hell yeah.
So I've actually had the opposite problem, which I'm not able to find as many statements and things that truly express Kojima's feelings and things on it, because he's kind of gone after that, and because he's at that point a lot of it is definitely on the because it's cool and Hollywood and all that side of things. So you definitely don't get something as obvious as Snake himself delivering Kojima's message, being his mouthpiece like he does in MGS2. But yeah, I was talking about patterns in the themes of the games and how each of them apply to Kojima. And you're gonna have to stop me here because I'm gonna go for a while. We're gonna cover the whole thing, and the difference between MGS1 and 2 for me and the rest of the series is that the themes in MGS1 and 2 are these little life lessons that Kojima wants to pass on in a way to tell you about, your genetic fate and your, of course, much bigger picture, how information is transmitted and passed on and evolves and gets interpreted in 2. These are sort of things that came naturally, that he, I feel, was in a way benevolently wanting to pass on to his fans. So that's when I have a problem with everything else, because I feel that it's not as spontaneous in a way. I feel that it's now heavily been influenced by the backlash the series suffered after MGS2. So people always tell me, oh, you don't like MGS3, why don't you like MGS3? Well, MGS3 is the first game where Kojima really let it get to him, I feel. So if we just, don't go too much down that one rabbit hole right now, but if we just stick to the words, like I said, Gene and Meme for MGS1 and 2 are these life lessons that he wants to pass on. And then 3 and especially 4 and we'll get to 5. With sense in 4 and scene in 3, these are things that I feel have started to affect him from the fans' reaction. So, without going too deep into each of these for now, unless you guys want to, we already mentioned Peace Walker's theme being obviously peace. And we know what Kojima went through with MGS4, and that now he's found his peace to want to make games again. The explosion of portable gaming and Monster Hunter and Kojima's son reaction to Monster Hunter as opposed to Metal Gear definitely had a part in that. But now Kojima wants to make games again with Peace Walker. So it makes sense, even though, like I said, it's just a feeling. But I will definitely agree that if you know what happened after MGS4's development, Kojima is now at peace because he's making games again without anybody literally threatening his life to do so. And that leads us to the final theme of revenge in MGS5. So I tell people, this is just my opinion, but if all the other themes in some way apply to Kojima himself, at first wanting to pass things on with MGS1 and 2, or give a little life lessons, and then in 3, the whole scene thing is, to me, the mess that happened with the development and trying to pass on his series, and eventually forcing him to do something that he would not have done otherwise, just like Naked Snake does, just like the boss does. Putting those themes of the political or, corporate scene forcing you to do things, to me, fits in that. And then the sense, of course, in MGS4, Kojima's words, I believe, were something like, yes, sometimes you try to pass things on, but the sense of what you try to pass on will be lost. So, yes, the team can make games. Yes, the team can keep working with me, but they didn't truly get the sense of what I was trying to pass on for 4. Then Peace Walker, okay, he's found his peace. So why wouldn't, and this is the main thing that I want you guys' opinion on, why wouldn't the theme of revenge apply to Kojima as well, when so far everything is applied to his state of mind at each game's development? So the theme of revenge for MGS5, there's some people who think, oh, that game is shit on purpose, or, that game is amazing, best gameplay, the story is so-so, whatever. So who exactly does the theme of revenge apply to in MGS5? What do you guys think? Before I give you my version of it, and I'm not saying that the game was bad on purpose, because there's more to it than that. It is not.
I mean,
man, you're preaching to the choir. Go ahead, Days. I've already got my answer prepared, but go ahead.
I don't know if I'm trying to just be like the copacetic granola in the group or something, but I don't exactly know if that, like, if those two opinions, or if you thinking that it's a good game and you thinking that revenge is the theme, are like mutually exclusive, or whatever you want to say. And the reason I say that is because, okay, so last week we had this discussion with 3Dog, right? Or I think it was 3Dog or Leo, one of the two. And to summarize it, it was basically like, you can look at the end, like you can look at MGS5's ending as the inverse of 2 in either a sort of release type of way, like, sorry, my coffee's not kicking in. You can see it. You can see it in a way that's like, you are becoming big boss. Like, you've become the big boss that you want to be, and I'll let you do your thing. Or you can sort of see it as like, you became this caricature of Big Boss for Big Boss, and it's really like cynical. And I'm probably not explaining it the best, so just take a listen to our last episode. But with that being said, if we look at it from that cynical approach, that approach of, I'm sticking you with this big boss, I'm sticking you in this role, whether you like it or not. I'm giving you back the dog tags, I think is the metaphor that we used. Then you can still use, you can still consider that theme of revenge, but man, I don't know if I even want to touch that whole the game intentionally being bad aspect of this concept. I'm just looking at it. I'm applying our conversation from last week. I'm just saying.
I'm just going to repeat for a second here. Let's make it clear. I do not think MGS5 was bad on purpose.
Okay. That changes up things a little bit. But I'd say my opinion still applies. Like, I think that, if we look at it from that sort of cynical view of the ending, then yeah, I can see that making sense. Your turn, Nitroid.
Okay. All right. I'm going to echo a bit of what you said, because you touched on some of it. If we go back and look at MGS2 and how that ended, it's sort of beautifully ambiguous. You don't know where things are going to go because this is sort of your story to fill in. You take what you got out of it and you move forward. And Kojima moves forward, and that's it. That's how this was supposed to stop, at least for him. But nobody got it. At least not enough people got it. And so here we are with Metal Gear Solid 3 and Metal Gear Solid 4 and Peace Walker, and he's been put into this cycle, repeating the same motions over and over and over again. And this was sort of what MGS4 was trying to criticize, was this repetition of patterns over and over and over again. And and MGS Cinco kind of revisits that notion of patterns being repeated ad infinitum. Another day in an endless battle. I can't remember the quote exactly. Another day in a war without end. This is just making another Metal Gear is just another day on the job for Kojima. At this point, it's not a passion project anymore, at least not like it used to be. In large part because all the way back in 2001 with Metal Gear Solid 2, nobody got it. And that's why we're here. That's why he's here. That's why he's still making these games, because nobody got what he was trying to say and they wanted more sequels. So, going to what you said, Days, MGSV does seem to invert Metal Gear Solid 2's ending by, as you said, handing the dog tags back in a way. Rather than rejecting the false identity and making your own, you're rejecting your own identity and embracing the false one. It struck me, and this is why I love the game so much and why I rated it so high, was that it seemed at the end, it was like Kojima looking at you and saying, you didn't get it the last time, so I'm going to give you exactly what you wanted. Enjoy.
From here on out, you're a big boss.
And then he just walked away. But, who knows what would have happened if he hadn't had to walk away, but what a place to drop the mic, That, to me, I think would be the revenge aspect, for better or worse, because the game does acknowledge that revenge is not necessarily the best thing. And in a way, you could look at the previous games that constantly try to it tries to upend the player's expectations of what the game's going to be by imparting a lesson that hopefully at some level leads back to that initial lesson in Metal Gear Solid 2. MGS4 in sense. That's basically saying some things, you can't pass on. Some things are intrinsic. And some things possibly even shouldn't be passed on. Those kind of lead you back to thinking, okay, well, what got us here? So, in a sense, it's been a cycle of revenge all the way up to this point, until finally he's like, fine, just take it. I don't care anymore. You're getting what you asked for. That's where I think it comes from. If that made any sense. As for race, that's another one, and I've got kind of an interesting take on that, but let's come back to that later.
I actually completely agree with that. I just see it under a more cynical light. And the reason that I don't go and say, oh, MGS5 is genius, because Kojima just hands you back the dog tags and tells you, here, you're happy now, you're a big boss like you wanted to be. You wanted to be a badass action hero. There you go. But I'm out. It's essentially the same thing that you're saying, and I've been saying this for a long time. The only thing that prevents me from fully acknowledging that MGS5 is That's all it is unfortunately the state in which the game was released. And now I know that there's people here who don't believe MGS5 is unfinished, but hear me out. When people say MGS5 is unfinished, usually they're referring to, I don't know, Chapter 3 memes or...
Chapter 3 memes.
Yeah, Chapter 3.
Never
or
be game over.
Yeah, Mission 51, Chapter 3 title screen, or Mission 51. Usually that's what they're referring to.
Yeah.
When I say that MGS5 is unfinished, I'm talking about something completely different. Because if we want to be technical, things get cut from games all the time. That's actually part of finishing a product, is cutting things from it. MGS2 had the whole Manhattan thing got cut out for reasons. The snake escaping the tanker with the water flooding everywhere, that was cut as well. So we're going to go out and say MGS2 is an unfinished game because of those things. Not quite. Those things were cut out as a part of the development process. So, see what I'm getting at?
Yeah. Yeah, but had the circumstances been different, like had he not been on the way out, yeah, the game might have had a different just direction and tone in general. So,
well, yeah, I've actually come really close to the conditions to be met to say MGS5 is genius, because Kojima is, going back to Proto and meta fans, kind of giving the Proto-fans, which I would imagine most casual fans, gaming journalists, and big names would fall into or fall under. You got good graphics, enjoyable gameplay, soundtrack, whatever, that people like. Oh, it's cool, you can do this, you have the helicopter and whatnot. So that's an automatic 10 out of 10 IGN. Big name, big production value, big good graphics, good important names in it. And the more casual fans can enjoy that.
as a video game.
As a video game, sure. And that's kind of the genius part of it. While at the same time, the people who can read into the meta of it also get that message of revenge, that it's hard for me to say that MGS5 is not possibly Kojima's revenge on the fans. Let's say it. Not because the game is bad on purpose, but because, like we said, he hands you back the dog tags and sort of gives in to the Proto-fans' demands in a way. But he doesn't care anymore, because just like Big Boss, Kojima is on his way out. And now he might have different things that he prioritizes and works on or cares about. I think Kojima was way too far gone into this Hollywood fetish by the time MGS5 was being developed. And honestly, he probably didn't want to keep up this whole, I failed to pass on the game, the series, like I wanted to. One thing that I'm not really a fan of is how it influenced every single game after MGS2. I wish that we would have gotten more, genuine Kojima thoughts and reactions and views that were not necessarily influenced by the fact, almost entirely by the fact that his failure to pass on the series caused everything to change. But it did. So I'm not the biggest fan of MGS3 for that reason. And MGS5, it would be genius if Kojima just got this great value, good graphics, good gameplay game out to the people who can look at it that way. So he gets praise for it, but also, it's my revenge on the fan base for the people who can see it.
But also revenge for blowing up my fucking mother base and revenge on Skullface. So that's what's I'm trying to argue the proto side just because both you guys are arguing mainly the meta. I enjoy a lot of the meta stuff too, and it adds that bonus layer to it for me where I'm like, oh, well, that's neat. But for me, I mainly am in it for the story and just the character interactions and stuff. So I can understand someone wanting the ambiguity in MGS2. I've always compared it to how in Star Wars, we had kind of that limited amount of information in the first trilogy. And then in the prequels, they were like, well, here's midichlorians and we're going to explain fucking everything. That's kind of like the MGS4 in this situation.
Oh, yeah.
So like some people are going to like that. They're like, cool, I wanted to know every little detail about what makes a jet, like they like that part of it. And some people are like, oh, but the mystique though. Like, I've literally had that conversation with people. So it's all just like perspective and taste and, personal preference on that side of it. And I think that's why there is so much clash when it comes to it, because you've just got people arguing from different schools of thought where it's not really necessarily right or wrong, but just, different views on it. But
well, actually, I rambled on for a long time, but I didn't get to the point that I was trying to make. Sorry.
Go ahead.
So you might be wondering, why do I think MGS5 is unfinished? The reason that I cannot just go out and say, yeah, Kojima got his good face value things for people who want that, and he's got his revenge meta thing for people who might look into that, and MGS5 is perfect. Why don't I say that? Why can't I say that? Unfortunately, because of the overall feeling of the quality of the structure and the technical aspect itself of MGS5, I could not bring myself to say this worked perfectly just as planned and this looks like it was planned. Because one of my major problems with MGS5 is that when there is nonsense, you never know if the nonsense is intended or the nonsense is a product of the absolute development hell that game went through.
Yeah.
And I could sit here and go over examples for hours and hours. I've probably played MGS5, I don't know more than you guys, but more than most people who watch the channel. And
more than Robert?
I mean, have you, okay, because when people tell me like, oh, I've got 500 hours, 600 hours in MGS5 or 1,000 hours in MGS5, usually it means that they played a lot of FOBs and farmed shit, right? But I don't know who actually goes and deletes their saves or keeps starting a new save, a new playthrough every time. Maybe you guys do, but that's actually part of the reason I want to bounce ideas off of you guys.
Well, let me first, before we sort of go anywhere, let me first offer a possible counterpoint to the notion that the game's unfinished. And I mean, let's put aside developer statements for a moment. Let's just shelve that. Okay?
Yeah.
I wonder about this for one big reason. I wonder how much of Metal Gear Solid 5, I'm going to have to try and get used to say that now. I have to commit to my own joke. I wonder how much of that feeling is a result of bad timing. Like, is that the game's worst sin? Bad timing? Had the drama in the company not happened, were Kojima still with his studio, and the game came out exactly as is, would we still be having this conversation? Like, how much of the it's unfinished conversation stemmed out of the fact that he was given the boot? On top of the fact that the game is literally called The Phantom Pain, which is it is an amazing alibi for having an unfinished game, because you can just say you're supposed to feel that way. So it's like you said, it's impossible to tell what's intentional and what's not. It is the perfect alibi.
You just look right at it and go, you feel it too, don't you?
Yeah, but
Sorry.
There are certain things that I can tell were not intentional, just because like little technicalities and little inconsistencies. Because I highly doubt that Kaz tells you to destroy your own entire emplacements of Mother Base because Kojima wanted to leave Konami or was going to leave Konami. I highly doubt that they reuse Ground Zero's Kaz's voice on Mother Base, and I'm sure you guys are aware of this. He tells you to destroy your own entire air base emplacements. Why? Because they just reused the fucking audio file without care or context of who it was, where the player was, and what was supposed to play there. I highly doubt that Ocelot talks about Skullface's death before it happens on purpose. It's because the tape is out of place. I highly doubt that OKB0 has Diamond Dogs containers because Skullface stole them instead of being reused assets. I highly doubt that Kaz's intel file is literally the only intel file in the entire game, even when you do missions unrelated to rescuing Kaz, because Kojima was leaving Konami and wanted to put his revenge in the game, or because he wanted to be painful. I think those are completely like idiotic parts of the development that just scream to me, we did not have the time, the money, the care, or the ability to know what we were doing. I don't know if you guys are aware of all these issues. I've got a list. I've got a video that I want to release with every single one of these things. Kaz tells you to destroy your own anti-air emplacements on Mother Base. Ocelot tells you that you stole an enemy vehicle if you fault on a car on Mother Base. Kaz praises you if you destroy your own vehicle in a mission where you're supposed to destroy vehicles. What the fuck?
It's... Again, I don't know if unfinished is the word I would use for that. This was the first time they had made an open world game, and if you've seen open world games, they're kind of a clusterfuck. Look at Cyberpunk. That's the perfect example. Those guys have so much experience making games. The Witcher 3 is masterful in many regards, and Cyberpunk is a mess.
That was the example I was going to think of, because there's a situation where you can sequence break your relationship with Johnny because you decided to do side missions before you go dig deep in the main story.
So is it unfinished or just a fuck up? Because previous games have fuck ups.
I mean, you could call it an oversight.
And this is their first time in a genre.
You could call it an homage because, you can beat the NES Metal Gear game by sequence breaking some of that. So, I don't know, maybe that's just been a thing the whole time.
Well, it kind of goes back to that point about plausible deniability, too. It kind of reminds me of that movie Knives Out with the old mystery author getting murdered.
I still haven't seen that, so
shit.
I got it.
Okay,
okay.
I'm gonna shut up now. But what I'm trying to say is, we go back to, the fandom cannot just accept a cigar as a cigar because the author, more often than not,
the author smokes that shit on the regular.
More often than not, the cigar means a lot of things. So in the context of 5, it's you have this sort of amalgamation of people who not only are concerned about how unfinished it is in terms of the story or whatever, but in terms of how intentionally unfinished it is. So you have to, it's almost like critical thinking is working against you in this situation.
Yeah. And I get that you're not arguing that these glitches are intentional. That's not what you're saying. Right.
Right.
These are genuinely just errors in the game.
I'm saying that these are errors, and it's just a matter of circumstance that these errors came from somebody who has replicated errors or used errors to convey something, convey a certain message. So it's just
this game is
the whole situation.
It's a Rorschach blot.
So you do think they're intentional?
No, I don't. Sorry, I don't think. Okay, I'm going to shut up now. Nitro doesn't think they're intentional, right?
No, I don't think they're intentional. I think they're bugs. I just don't necessarily think that it's an indication that the game is unfinished so much as, we've had this talk before, Days, about software development and how finished is sort of a nebulous concept.
Right. Acceptance criteria can change at any time.
Sure.
Because there are bugs in finished, there are bugs in Metal Gear Solid 4 that haven't been patched out. So does that mean that game's unfinished, or is it just an oversight? When you've got a game as complex as this, where you've got an open world and a million interacting pieces, you're gonna have weird emergent behaviors pop out. You see it all the time in Grand Theft Auto, and that game is tied down.
So we could argue that what it really means for a piece of software to be finished at that point. But it's funny you mentioned MGS4. Because I think the main thing is when playing any of the other games or rewatching the making of MGS4, they tell you just how much Kojima used to, play test and report bugs, send things back to the development team, keep reporting things, play testing all over the place. And that is part of the development process. I cannot feel that they did the same thing with 5. You might say, "Oh, it's an open world game." I have arguments against that as well. But anyway, but the thing is, when you got like maybe 2 guys in the credits, 2 guys working on the physics, and you've seen what some of the vehicles can do, you start thinking, where's the playtesting? Where is, I cannot believe that Kojima, the perfectionist who playtested and reported bugs tirelessly and would not release a game until it's, in his opinion, acceptable, even MGS4. I could not believe.
I don't think it was really his call at that point, you know?
See, I would disagree though, because there, in the same videos you're talking about, there are examples of Kojima arguing with Kurikado about features versus bug testing and optimization, and Kojima would push for more features despite the fact that Kurikado would say, no, we gotta stop because this is breaking. And we're running on a deadline here. Going back to Cyberpunk, that was a game that had a 9-year development cycle by a team that is well known for making polished games. And the final product is, unarguably a mess.
Oh, yeah.
And then we're talking about the Phantom Pain, and that game had, there were, 7 years between 4 and 5. So if we're assuming post-engine development, which was probably, a 3-year process, I'm spitballing here because I don't have the timeline in front of me. We can probably say that MGS V5, Cinco, whatever, had 3 to 4 years development time. Would that be a fair? Would you say that's about right?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, at least.
With a team, again, that had absolutely no experience with open world development. We're talking half of the time. And it's just, I don't know. I mean, I get what you're saying. I do. I just don't know if I can.
Well, here's the thing. You two, I don't usually get the chance to talk to people who also presumably grew up playing the series and played the shit out of the series. So this is a good opportunity for me to really, I always try to convey this feeling on stream as best as I can. Perhaps the problem is that I've gotten used to a certain standard, playing these games in such a way that, and excuse the pun, they are made solidly. They're such solid products.
Yeah.
Like you might say, there's bugs in every game. There's no clipping. There's glitching things. There's maybe even little inconsistencies if you look in every game. But holy shit, and the thing with MGS5, unlike the other games, is that I literally, personally, could not play that game without running into something that reminds me it was rushed and it came out in this, to me, pathetic state. Even when I try to do the most series of runs, something crazy, and the people who watch my stream can tell you, something always happens that makes you go like, what the fuck? And I'm going to connect to something that you guys recently said, how MGS2 is the Truman Show.
Hey.
Yes, because everything is arranged in such a way to make Raiden feel comfortable, except when he's not supposed to, So I can see that connection. Everything is prearranged for Raiden to go through. Now, if you expand that definition to any piece of software that is made for the player to go through, and, within certain boundaries, within certain features and things that you're supposed to see or not supposed to see. Now, when it comes to MGS5, I've actually said this before, but I feel it's more in theme now. MGS5 is a terrible Truman Show for me.
Yeah.
Because every step of the way, I can peek around the corner and see that it's just for show, that is, and not really made that well. The best way that I can put this is it's like a cardboard cutout, and the closer you get, the more you realize that there's not a whole lot to it. So it looks good from afar, but when you get close, and that's how I feel about most of the cutscenes in MGS5, it's like they were made to look cool in trailers. People do cool actions and whatnot, but then once you get to the reasons as to why those things happened, and literally the raw story behind it is just not as interesting as you might have thought. And this is highly
There's no impact.
Yeah, this is highly subjective. I get that. And Kojima's been diverting expectations since ages, like forever. People say MGS2, but I say MGS1 trailers as well. You got those trailers with Snake and Meryl shooting the walls for absolutely no reasons, or Snake blowing up the base, which never happens, just to look cool. They want those trailers to look cool.
It's C4, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. You can literally see Meryl shoot the wall in one of the MGS1 trailers. Absolutely no reason. But it looks cool because they're shooting things together. So Kojima's always done that. But then you play the actual game, it doesn't happen, and there's a whole different story behind it. And if you want to get down that rabbit hole, then the story is something higher, something superior, something deeper or more interesting. That has always been the case for me.
So then the question becomes, did Kojima, quote unquote, make it bad on purpose? If you think it's bad,
no.
I don't think it's bad, but no. Let me finish what I mean. This is a point I've tried to raise before. I personally like the game, but I understand that a lot of people do not. And so I've seen so much. I've seen so many people like twist themselves into knots to try to justify the parts of that game that they don't like. And sometimes you just got to ask yourself, like, did he just make a game that wasn't that good? At least to you. You know, I personally liked it. A lot of people liked it, but the people who didn't, maybe it's not always going to be what you like.
Oh yeah.
Maybe it's just like, how many bad games have you played that are not because of some higher purpose, you know? They're just bad games.
Yeah.
You know? It's just not every design idea is going to work on paper. Or going to work in practice. You know, it may sound good on paper, but it's not going to necessarily play out the way you think it will in your head.
Yeah, I used to hear a lot, just people would say, you know, it's a good game. It's just not a good Metal Gear game. So, it was, you know, it's just like you said earlier with your standard and like what the other games set before that, you know, you're kind of like going in expecting something, but now they're like, but what if we did an open world one? And it's like, well, that kind of worked.
I absolutely went in expecting something just because of the Metal Gear game name. But that's not to say that I'm pissed off about the twist or I'm pissed off about the tapes, or it's just there's so many things that, and maybe this is me being a little arrogant now, I feel could have been done better. And this is highly subjective again.
That's how I feel about MGS4.
Yeah. I just it's astounding to me that they did not think of doing it in this way. Maybe I don't understand quite the resources or the time involved in doing it. But say, for example, the Shining Lights mission. I absolutely abhor that mission. I cannot stand it. It's one of the things that triggers me the most when I play that mission. I want to seriously shut down a game. Because you finally have something that happens around the player instead of, you know, all these little tiny missions where you rescue a random dude in the desert. You finally have something happening on Mother Base around the player. And what do? On rails, never seen before, nothing leading up to it, zombie, generic zombie flick that, oh, my friends are infected, I gotta kill them. That infuriates the shit out of me. There's so many ways that I think they could have gone about it. Have Mother Base indoor areas, have connections to the characters, visit those facilities before they are infected, develop like a routine that makes the player go through them, have characters with names, with conversations, maybe side stories or side objectives, create a connection with them, and then they get infected, you got to go there, you got to shoot them, and you see the facilities from working normally to, you know, in shambles and blood everywhere like you do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of potential there lost for sure.
That would have been the amazing way to go around it and have the fully functional Mother Base and the facilities and the characters to connect to. Instead, you know what I say on stream when I play that mission? Oh, this is the first time I'm seeing the inside of Mother Base. Literally, new base, who this?
Yeah.
Who are you? I've never seen you before. I've never been in this facility before. I'm supposed to be the boss.
But they're singing this song.
I really like the comparison you made about the about it being sort of an anti-Truman Show where everything is hollow.
Yeah, but it's
I mean, everything's
I can't
hollow in the
say-
Truman Show, but this is almost like you said, it's a weird inverse.
Yeah, but it's arranged in such a way that Truman believes it, Raiden believes it at first. This is terrible because you can tell it's obviously not done on purpose. It's all the little technicalities that just the game leaking everywhere. That to me, okay, maybe let's not say unfinished and unrefined, unpolished, whatever you want to call it. Every step of the way, be it the mission structure, the lack of memorable music, the pathetic mission objectives, the level design is non-existent. The gameplay,
It's really weird in comparison to Ground Zeroes too, because Ground Zeroes is tight.
Oh yeah, when I say MGS5 pisses me off, I'm talking about Phantom Pain. We should just call it the Phantom Pain. What the hell happened between Ground Zeroes and the Phantom Pain? Like,
Ground Zeroes is awesome.
Yeah.
Ground Zeroes is awesome.
So
And yeah, you know what I always tell people, and let people realize by themselves, stop to think about Ground Zeroes for a second and realize that Ground Zeroes is probably accidentally the most realistic Metal Gear game there is. There's nothing crazy that cannot happen in real life that happens in Ground Zeroes, and which goes perfectly with the shift in tone that we're talking about. You know, no silly Fulton balloons, reduce HUD, less like crazy stuff going on whatsoever, a darker, more serious tone. You now got torture and rape and all that stuff, and the reproduction of Guantanamo Bay and everything. That fell in perfectly. Skullface could have just been a burn victim. That there's people in real life who are much uglier than him. No offense. And they're just burn victims. We didn't need this whole parasite thing to go with it. So stop to think about it for a second. Correct me if I'm wrong. Nothing unrealistic happens in Ground Zeroes.
You see, I'm really trying to think now.
Yeah, I mean, outside of like the deja vu mission.
I mean, of
Yeah,
course,
yeah,
I'm
that
talking
doesn't
about.
count.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the main story, of course.
Yeah,
The most
exactly, yeah.
unrealistic thing.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah, the most unrealistic thing in Ground Zeroes is the iDroid.
I'm really struggling. Yeah, I think you're right.
The fact that trademark would work out. I think I'd get I and droid.
Yeah, that's such a funny name to use.
Implausible.
So I got to ask, given everything we've said about the Phantom Pain and whether or not it was unfinished and Kojima's time spent on the project and his apparent fatigue with the franchise, fast forward, he's now free to do what he wants. He has, full reign to do anything. And what he makes is Death Stranding. What are your thoughts on that?
Too little, too late. He's too far gone. He's been far gone since MGS5's development. With the second he got in contact with Avi Arad, he got his foot into the door with Kiefer, with everything. I do not think that we are now getting a genuine like Kojima being free again thing, because I mean he probably is, but
Too much of a Hollywood influence?
It's adulterated, if you will.
absolutely. And to be fair, that's been a thing, as we know, since MGS3 has been wanting to get Kurt Russell to voice Snake, which of course he got laughed in the face for, and it didn't happen. Hader shamefully had to re-audition and re-record lines because of that. So you could argue that, maybe if Kojima had been left to do whatever he wanted, he would have done something similar anyway, maybe with not as many connections. And who knows if that would have, for us players, been a good thing or a bad thing. I'm not really a fan of the fact that Kojima basically put real-life music bands and real-life people in everywhere in Death Stranding, not just Hollywood, but in his circle of friends. And I get the deeper theme of connection that he's trying to put in Death Stranding, and that's cute and everything. But unfortunately, being another open world game, and this might be a higher problem here. This might be a personal problem that I have with many and most open world games. And you might fight me on this. I personally do not think that we have the technology today to make a true open world game where everything is live, real-time interaction and consequences. You simply cannot, if anything, just because things can only load so far around the player. But anyway, I don't want to get into that because it's just a much deeper problem that I have personally. I don't think open world games should be a thing yet. But to me, Death Stranding was another failure at creating an open world that's not feeling alive, because I understand that isn't it convenient that most open world games take place in like a deserted like context or place or some cataclysm, whatever. Anyway, deserted Afghanistan, deserted like Death Stranding, America with
big open fields that take about 5 minutes for you to
yes,
sit there and listen to a tape while you get to your objective.
Isn't that convenient that all these open world games just happen to be fucking deserted? So that's one thing. Sorry, let me finish because that's not really the point I was trying to make. It's just something I was being a smartass about. But to me, Death Stranding is another failure at creating an open world, not that's alive because it's not supposed to be, but that feels real, that feels credible. Example, in the other, and again, I'm going to have to go back to other Metal Gear games.
I'm pretty sure the United States isn't 5 miles wide.
Oh, yeah. Example, there's exactly one horse in MGS5. There's two, but then it goes down to one. I don't know if you guys ever realized that Big Boss, or Big Medic, as I call him, has this unseen before technology of riding horses that nobody else is aware of. There's literally no horses in MGS5 other than yours. You see for a brief second ocelots at the beginning, but apparently that goes straight to the glue factory because it's never to be seen again. It's just a recolor of the horse anyway. How do the enemies get fooled by a horse when you're laying on the side of it when there's one horse in the world? There's exactly one horse in the entire world. And same thing in Death Stranding. There's one deer in the entire world that you see at the beginning and never to be seen again.
I was playing it a couple weeks ago and I found a fish. I was pretty amazed by that.
Yeah, and it makes you go like, wow, I found something finally.
Well, yeah, the animals were getting fucked up in that game though, so that makes sense at least.
It's true, but can I at least see that one deer that you showed me like somewhere? But I think it's the same problem that D-Horse has in MGS5. There's one horse in the entire world.
Yeah, they don't feel, the worlds don't feel lived in. They may not need to be alive, but they need to feel lived in.
I like to call them, that's a good way of putting it. I also like to call it credible, make it feel credible. In the other games, you're in your own self-enclosed base that you practically never step out of, or whatever area you're supposed to be in, and each of those areas have, their own part of being, their own part of the world feel credible. You can keep thinking, there's technically the rest of the world out there. Things are happening. For example, codec conversations also contribute to that. But in MGS5 and even in Death Stranding, it's so weird. It's like everything is set up there purely for the player. And don't get me wrong, all games are set up just for the player to go through, of course. But they don't constantly leak this feeling of it's just like I said, bad Truman Show. It's leaking the fact that it's not lived in or credible.
I think coming from like a game like MGS2, it feels pretty lived in,
I was going to say, it goes back to your expectations for like detail-oriented set pieces.
Yeah, you have the dead bodies thrown around the tanker and you're like, oh shit, things actually happened here. Like you get a feel for what this was like before you showed up. And I think that you might agree with me on this, but I feel like Kojima is a stronger creator when he's working within limitations, literally and figuratively speaking. Because if you have limited environments, constrained environments, more linear set pieces, it seems like those games do have a stronger, more natural feel to them. And as they got wider and larger, they sort of lost that genuine element, that authenticity.
Look what he can do with one hallway.
Exactly. PT is a fantastic example. That is downright masterful. It's one of the best things he's ever made.
Yeah.
And it's literally like one hallway.
Yeah, and when you start expanding the world, naturally you should go with all the details that come with the expanded areas, the infrastructure, the life that should be going on in it. But I think, and it's really hard to convey, going back to what I was saying, seeing certain features that were done in the other games, perhaps because of these constraints that we're talking about. So usually when you see a sequel of a game come out, you assume that, all the things in the previous games are at least accounted for. Not necessarily there, but you have holdups in MGS3, just like you have holdups in MGS2. You can now interrogate people. So the feature comes back and it's improved or built upon. In MGS4, you can't interrogate anymore, but you can squeeze their ball sack. So it was at least aware that you could hold up people, and they decided to reimagine that. They didn't think a snake needed to interrogate people anymore. Okay, sure, whatever. But when I see, and I think the key word really is details and features here, missing, it really infuriates me, because you can clearly see the radio, which is just a ripoff of the iDroid model on their hips, and you can't shoot it anymore. You ever tried to hold up a guy with an empty gun in MGS2 and go click and see what happens?
Yep.
Yeah, you tried doing that in 5?
Can you, I haven't tried it in 5, no, but I'm guessing they don't react?
They don't react. And they literally drown themselves in 5 if you hold them up in what little, ankle deep water there is. Because that's the other thing. That there's, yeah. They drown themselves. You hold them up in the water and they drown themselves. They are very committed to that holdup. They will drown themselves and they start bleeding all over the place somehow.
I can't remember. Do you, I can't remember if it was 3 or 4 or which of the games that it was that, as far back as MGS2, if you started plugging the guards with tranquilizer darts, you would see them sticking out.
Yep. Okay, here's a curious thing, and this will lead us straight into something that Days wanted to talk about. So you can see the darts in 2, you can see the darts in 3, you cannot see them in 4, but you can see them in 4 online.
Okay.
Isn't that amazing?
Okay, hold up a second. I did not know this. There's a lot of weird stuff going on with MGO2.
Guess you gotta start playing again, Nitroid. Oh, wow.
Get them to change it back. Get the Save MGO guys to come up with a classic server or reverse the changes.
You need that vanilla MGO.
And I will be right back on. I'll play MGO1 though.
Can I say something? Because I think your guys respect you too much, Nightfall. You're being a gigantic pain in the butt with this MGO2 thing that they changed. Yes, it's not pretty.
He's saying the quiet part out loud. That's how we all feel. We're too nice to say it to you.
I'm sorry. I'm not budging. I care too much about preservation. It's.
But I want my snow.
You are literally like old man yells at cloud.
I will yell at that cloud until it gets the hell down from there.
Coming from him, Jesus Christ, man! Everybody, in the comments to tell Troy to get back on MGO2.
I got principles.
Put it in the replies.
I give you a compromise. How about you guys join my room, and if we see anybody with the altered textures, we ban them. We tell them not allowed.
But they got rid of the environment effects too.
Oh well. Which maps were not affected?
Yeah, I know some of those people. It's gonna get a little bit dramatic for me, so I don't know.
Man, it's about the principle of the thing.
You're going to die on that hill.
Yeah,
I am gonna die on this.
You're telling people
this is a nice
who
hill.
love you. You're just saying fuck you guys because some motherfucker can wear a New York Yankees hat and it doesn't snow as much.
You know what's funny is that if Kojima, if MGO2 legitimately had a New York Yankees hat, as an official thing, I would be cool with it.
Yeah. But anyway, we're gonna go back to MGO2 real quick. I just wanted to mention other things like, destroying the food and ammo supply in 3 and the faction system and sort of like currency and weapons store thing that you have in 4. Those things would have been, I think, at home in an open world game. So
They kind of were.
Yeah.
Like you could mess up all the supplies for the different things, and then they wouldn't be able to like make helmets or make flashlights.
yeah, but
that's-
those are deployment missions, aren't they?
I think there was just that whole like economy that they had in the game that was kind of like learning how you played. And
Yeah,
so if you were
yeah.
doing headshots, they would wear helmets. So like you could just, I think it was if you just like messed up with the resources.
But messing with the resources, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, they are deployment missions that you're meant to. And the deployment missions are, again, a thing that if you read the little story that goes with them, it's often more interesting than the missions that you do as the player. But anyway, it's true that you can mess with their things and they change equipment. That's perhaps the best thing that I could maybe praise about MGS5 is, yes, they base their equipment on what you do. If you replay the mission, they're going to use different things like armor, shields, helmets, NVGs, gas masks. Yes. But like in 3, you yourself destroyed the supply shack and you see the effects of it when you load the next map. And it influences the soldiers' like AI and actions during things. The whole faction system, I think, that from MGS4, which isn't really too explored outside of Act 1 and 2, and even then only a few areas, I think would have been great to have it in 5 rather than, just have everybody be dead. One thing that I think we need to keep in mind, though, is that, for example, MGS5 cannot render more than 12 people on screen. So you have all these wide open, deserted areas. It cannot render. I don't know if you guys have ever seen what happens when you have more than 12 people on screen on MGS5.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it, we had to go back and talk about the fact that the game had to run on PS3, for example. The reason that your mother base bridges are so long is because the game needs time to load as you approach things. Like the way that the game handles the memory and the spawn of entities around the player is kind of laughable, if you ask me. Yeah, there's just, I don't want to sit here and put MGS5 in trial with you guys, but I could go on, and I will go on once I make my complete video about it. There's just so many things on the technical level that scream, we didn't give a fuck, or we didn't have the time to work on this properly.
I think that's a big thing of it was just like time and like I think that's a big part of like why the breakup kind of happened. It was just like time plus funding plus we need more time plus we need more money plus, Kojima like mismanaging some money and doing a bunch of dumb shit on the side. And it was like, man, we could have been working on stuff. You had to do this whole fake shell company and wear a mask and all this dumb shit and hire these voice actor,
I know.
real life Hollywood actors. It's like, come on, bro.
Yeah.
I love that stuff, man.
You had to spend all that money on that licensed music. Come on, bro.
I loved it.
And that's like, I get it. But he was setting a fire behind him as he walked out the door. He's like, fuck you guys. I don't know.
We should talk about how closely.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Oh
how
my
closely
God,
the structure of the structure of 5 and Peace Walker reflect one another. And when I go back to play Peace Walker, literally everything is more detailed. But I don't really want to sit here and be salty about 5 all the time. But I'm curious if maybe I can prompt you guys to ask me things that I can talk about, because I don't want to, like I said, make a monologue out of shitting on MGS5.
No, you're
It's
good.
okay. I do want to make this point. I feel like this would be a good bookend, but it's interesting because we started this conversation. I think Nitrate had mentioned GTA 5, and it's funny that he said that, because as soon as he said that, I just remember, I forget like what interview this was or where it was, but I remember it was like Kojima was talking about GTA 5 and how when he first saw it and saw like all that detail, like even if you think that it's not objectively a good open world game because it doesn't meet that standard, that expectation for open world games yet, he saw that, and his first reaction, and of course this is while he was developing Metal Gear Solid 5, was like, oh my God, what am I doing? Like he said that he had sort of like an emotional falling out, and that he felt inferior. Like how, like why couldn't, like he wasn't capable of pulling off what Rockstar did. And in retrospect, I feel like that was like a canary in a coal mine in a way, because it's like you both are coming. I feel like you DRK and Nitroid are coming from a place of empathy. DRK in a sense that Kojima didn't have enough resources to, like you said, give a shit in terms of the level of detail that we expect. In Nitroid, from a software developing perspective, where it was like he drafted a project, it got greenlit, you know, they did their PI planning and their sprint planning, but it just overwhelmed them. So
if we had something akin to the perhaps a document or the grand plan of MGS5, then we might be able to draw some reasonable conclusions, like Otacon would say. But we don't really have a whole lot. Like
You just have like the art books.
yeah, I mean, there's a whole like Chico
pretty much
thing. Yeah, Chico's design and everything. There are definitely things that were supposed to be there. I don't know if you guys know the whole fiasco with Battle Gear, for example.
I was about to bring up Battle Gear, actually. I was like, and when you said with, you know, Kojima talking to Kurikato about like that being a balance issue versus, you know, like will this ruin the game, or, you know, is this a technical thing where having that many people trying to fight it would have been too much? I just remember that just being a balance quote, and that's all that was ever really said. I don't know the exact reason.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is, but there's one of two possibilities here. If you're telling me that it's a balance issue, then you're telling me that you programmed it and you tested it and you carefully balanced it against everything else that the game has to offer and decided that was too overpowered.
Yeah, I think that's the most, because
that's bullshit.
Just imagine wrecking shit in that thing.
That's bullshit. So they either did
it would be a great final reward, like to get that and just be like, yeehaw, just fuck up shit.
Yeah, so they either did all of that and wasted a bunch of time and money, or they didn't and you just lied to us.
Yeah.
It's one of the two. It cannot be anything else that I can see. And given the amount of balance that is in the game to begin with, I'm inclined to believe that they did not have time to play test and balance everything. The funny thing is, Battle Gear is supposed to be an anti-Walker Gear measure, right? Have you guys seen what happens if you just run into a Walker Gear with D-Horse or a car?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay, so with D-Horse, you clip through it and the guy gets stunned as if you trampled him instantly. And with a car, one of three things can happen. Either you graze the guy, which we'll get into later because it gets even more glitchy, or it just blows up instantly. Or three, he sort of gets on your hood and becomes a hood ornament and doesn't react in any other way. So telling me that an anti-Battle Gear weapon was carefully balanced and thought out and decided to be cut when you can already do crazy things with Battle Gears, with Walker Gears, with just your car or horse, that's bullshit. In the first instance, it's the glitchiest one because, and this probably doesn't need to make it into the podcast, I'm just sharing gameplay details for you guys that piss me off. You know how a guy gets wounded and starts like dying on the ground, like worming around and slowly dying? Yes. That's what they're supposed to do when they get run over, not dead instantly. If they get run over on a Walker Gear, though, since they are in that animation that they're piloting a Walker Gear, they don't have an animation that has them get injured and fall off the Walker Gear. No, they just stay on it. They're slowly dying, but you don't see it. They're just perfectly fine. You can walk in front of them. They don't attack you. They don't alert. They're just standing there, slowly dying. And once their timer is up, then they fall off out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So it's these kind of things, and my God, I see every time that I play the game again, I see something new that doesn't make any sense in the gameplay as well as in the story.
Usually when you describe a Metal Gear like, I see something that I haven't seen before, it's a good thing, but 5 is like the only opposite, where it's like, I saw something new and it pissed me off.
I have a question. And I know we're kind of going in circles here.
Sure. That's what I do.
Do you think they do not sufficiently test Elder Scrolls games?
I would not be giving you an informed opinion because I don't touch those games with a 10-foot pole.
You should try sometime, because if the Phantom Pain makes you angry, you would throw your controller through the window with an Elder Scrolls game.
I know the Bethesda memes, and I know the Fallout memes, and the Elder Scrolls memes.
But I would never, those games are hilariously broken at times, in large part due to how complex they are, because they are trying, God bless them, they are trying to get to that point you talk about where you have a living open world. That is their goal. And they, again, I've made this comparison twice. They're like Icarus, flying close to the sun, and they get burned.
Yeah,
because they cannot get there. We're not there yet, and the engine's just not sophisticated enough to hold it up to that level. Because when you can do a million things in an engine, and those million things can all interact with each other, it is impossible to predict what someone's going to do with your engine once it's out of your hands.
I don't think that's...
But I would never say that they do not sufficiently test their games. Maybe in the case of Fallout 76, like that. Okay, I'll say that one's broken, but
okay, okay. Just going by the perception that I have from just seeing and hearing things around, not having played the games, absolutely, they probably don't test them enough. Maybe they do. I'm not.
But I mean,
person.
We're talking about testing on a scale of, you would need 10 years.
I get it.
Like Skyrim, and the fans, you have thousands of fans contributing to fan patches to fix things, and they're still not anywhere close enough to making this game fully stable.
Yeah, I mean, you're making my point. I keep saying that we do not have the technology to really make an open world game, if you ask me. But I don't think that, there's the expectation of the higher standard for Metal Gear in the first place. And that's probably
true.
not going,
that's true.
Not going anywhere. And secondly, those are big open world choice-based games. That's MGS5 for what it brings. I don't think it gets as much of a slack for not anticipating what the player can do and not anticipating the player's choices. It just doesn't bring enough to the table like an RPG open world game does.
Oh, I agree. I just wonder what it speaks more to. Does it speak more to the complexity of open world games, or does it speak more to how little effort they put into bug testing? Because it could go either way. In fact, it may go both ways.
Yeah, in fact, that's what my answer was going to be. It's a good thing you mentioned more, because it's definitely a little bit of both. If you ask me, it's both. These people do not have a clue how to make an open world game. An open world game that cannot render more than 12 people and everything has to be deserted because of how the memory is managed is not an open world game. An open world game where the missions are effectively selected from a mission list and have their own mission area, where nothing you do, or almost nothing you do, is actually reflected in the world, is not an open world game. I'm really puzzled by the structure trying to recreate Peace Walker when Peace Walker was made with obvious limitations in mind of the PSP for a full budget home console game. So I don't know that you can call it an open world game. I know that GTA has something similar. When you start a mission, you can't walk away from it. And that's one of the things that Rockstar is being criticized for. Once you start a mission, you have to do it the way that they want you to do it. Yeah. Otherwise, it's a game over.
Yeah.
But that also prevents it from breaking too much.
That also prevents it from breaking. You have to limit the player.
Yeah.
But maybe it's because we were spoiled by Ground Zeroes again. In Ground Zeroes, the base is small enough that it feels like...
God, that game plays so good.
Yes, the level design in Ground Zeroes is amazing. This base is complex and small enough that it feels like anything you do affects the whole base. And correct me if I'm wrong. That's the feeling I've been getting. I
could draw Camp Omega like right now. You put a piece of paper in front of me, I could draw it for you. OKB0, not a chance.
OKB0, you know what the laughable part of it is that all the gates are open. It's a straight line. You literally waltz in, and it's
still not memorable.
Line. Yep, it's not. And it's one of those happy areas where they had the happy idea of putting more than 12 people, and the game breaks beyond recognition, and it's just hilarious the way that the game breaks if you do certain things. And like you said, it will take 10 years to test any and all of those things that the players can do. But for what the game brings in terms of level design and the way that they want you to approach missions, yes, there's many ways, but at the end of the day, you're not really motivated to do anything other than sneaking around and shooting people in the face with a tranquilizer. For what it brings, I think that in the context of those things, they should have tested more. Maybe not the 10 years that we're talking about, but also maybe not a ridiculously, to me, laughable lack of just details and anticipating what the players could do. There's an in-between that I think is justifiable, that they can't test everything. Because like I said, even older games, non-open world games, if you want to get into trouble with glitches, you can do that. But you have to go out of your way to do it. Often MGS5 for me will do it itself without me trying to. So for how ridiculously small the areas are that you cannot walk past, and how essentially the story happens on a different plane of existence in MGS5 than what the player actually sees in the game, I cannot justify not having tested simple things such as Kaz telling you to destroy your own stuff, or stealing your own vehicles, or all those reuse assets and wrong lines and glitches and missing features such as just how you hold people up and shoot their radios and whatnot. Let's not get into the gun details. I could go on for ages.
I was gonna say, you're about to hit that cliff, man, and that's okay.
Stop me.
But we want to make sure that we get all our questions in, if that's cool.
I know. No. You can.
This is my fault. I take full responsibility.
It's always Nitroid's fault, and he worries that he's just the meme guy. Like, I'm like, no, you spark people's brains and shit. All right. Anyways.
I'll shut up about it now.
No, you're good. You're good. We did actually. We did want to ask you a bit about MGO2.
Yes, please do.
I always joke about Nitroid. It's so funny because I'm like trying to get a hold of my PlayStation 3 to give this a shot. And Nitroid's sitting there with the ability to play. And he's just like, well, I'm not going to play this. And it's like...
You know what?
And it's like some people are so spoiled. But no.
Oh, my God.
This is a question I had for you, actually.
I will say this, okay? If you can get it working, and we can get enough people that we know, then I will hop on.
All right.
I think that's easily doable.
That's definitely doable. But yeah.
That's what I've been wondering, Days. Like, does Nitroid actually bar you from playing because you express interest in it, but he says that you can't?
No, this is exclusively my dumb hang up.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
well, no. What's happening was they originally gave me sort of the lowdown on the whole Save MGO project, and I'm like, okay, that's great. Like, wanna do something with it, like make content with it. And Nitroid's like, well,
what was it like again?
I sound like that.
Then my PS3 broke out of nowhere.
Yeah, and then Fingers' PlayStation 3 broke. And since then, I've kind of seen the scene sort of here and out. Like I talk to people who play the game about other games, and then I learn by osmosis. But then I made that joke about Nitroid. And then because you mentioned that you were going to start streaming it, and then you had talked about this sort of effort or initiative to kind of open up MGO2 more. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I'm interpreting that right, but we were just kind of curious at sort of what you meant. And if you've explained this on your stream, I'm sorry I wasn't paying attention.
That's okay. I don't expect people to remember every single thing that I say on stream because I'm the one who keeps repeating it. You don't have to be there all the time. No, I mean, it's really simple. To me, MGO2 is a way to diversify the stream, include the viewers more with interaction on stream, and sort of take a break from the regular schedule that we always have of the story runs and challenges and everything. Because honestly, I mean, when you do as much as I do, I think I do get burned out a little bit. So it's just, back in the day, I tried it and I liked it, and I learned all the little features and details about it. I learned the sad reality of the netcode behind it, and I was pretty excited when I found out about the Save MGO project. And back in the day, it required you to actually hack your PS3, so it wasn't something I could ask people to do on stream to join. There's a legality of it, and there's just a technical aspect of it that most people won't bother with. But since then, they've made it a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always brainstorming and always thinking, what kind of Metal Gear content can I bring to the channel? Some new challenge, some new game, some new, different version of something.
Yeah, and I was mentioning that to Three Dog. Like, you guys always seem to figure out a way to increase that engagement, even if it's just like donations, like the Save Meryl versus like Kill Meryl type stuff.
That's a really amazing thing that our supporters chose to do themselves. It started as I don't know if it started as a joke or not being serious about it in the chat. And they made it a thing almost every single time that we play MGS1. Somebody will start
That's awesome.
that donation war, and we do not prompt it. We want some, maybe it's a little bit of humility also that you're getting these huge donations for going over the game and playing the game. So to me, it's important that it's a spontaneous thing that came from the chat that we don't push for. I do feel like people can choose to do whatever they want with their money, and they see value in what we do. We are humbled by it.
Yeah, man, I think it's well earned. Like you got, like you said, you're out here just about every day. Just doing these streams, and it takes a lot out of you. Like it's not just sitting there playing games.
Yeah,
like
it
it
does.
is involved, and you're sitting there reading the chat, and it's draining. So don't think that it's not worth it or anything like that. It's well deserved. So. You guys are killing it, man. Outer Haven Network,
Agreed.
y'all bring good shit to the table. So
Thank you. I'm glad. I started seeing streaming Metal Gear games more and more as a mission and a sort of continuation of wanting to pass on the series and to interpret the series and to keep it relevant, keep it on the internet, keep it alive. We were lucky enough to be the biggest channel on Twitch to do so. There's others, of course. We're lucky enough to have this community backing us, and I don't know exactly how much of a dent we put in it in keeping things alive, but we do seem to get people who come and join, stay, and enjoy the stream. And I've started doing it mostly for fun, and I thought I was good at the games I wanted to show off. That's all I thought Twitch was about back in the day, or I should say Justin TV.
yeah,
But with time and the more and more analysis coming from the games and learning things and wanting to share things, I see it more as a mission now to keep the series alive, and it's messed up because I want to pass on the series, but I don't quite claim to be, in Kojima's position or anything. However, I do imagine how he must have felt being unable to develop anything else, because I'm also basically unable to play anything else on my channel. So there's that parallel there that's quite interesting.
we're all locked in with Metal Gear. It's like we're like eternal prisoners of this fucking series. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you look at my list of backlog games and other games that I play, it's ridiculous. I have things from like 2005 still there.
Lord.
If you used to have different channels and things, but I really want to take OHN to whatever level I possibly can. So if I stream something else, I feel that it takes away more than it would give me as a personal satisfaction playing on other games, even though there are other games that I play.
Yeah.
People come in with that expectation, and I think I understand how Kojima felt. I want to develop other games, but people expect me to make Metal Gear. It's an interesting parallel. But yeah, it's now a mission.
Screw with them. Play police nuts.
Oh yeah, you're gonna get maybe that 10-20% of people excited about it, recognizing it. And 80% will be like, what the fuck is this?
Introducing them to a new game they never heard, they might enjoy, they might think is weird as shit.
Yeah.
So.
Eat your
This
vegetables.
isn't Metal Gear.
Well, hey, DRK, we appreciate you coming on the show. If you want to plug where people can find you online and watch your streams, you can go ahead with that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Twitch.tv/outerheaven. We're glad to always welcome new people, and you're most likely going to learn something new about the games or see in a different way, share things, opinions with people. And we hope to keep the series alive and relevant, and it's become a mission, like I said. So hope to see you guys there. Oh, and of course, check out 3Dog as well. He is my partner in all of this. Right now, we're doing marathons on both of our channels. So you'll be seeing me on his channel as well. He'll be streaming on Outer Heaven as well. We take turns each month. We'll do prolonged marathons with all the games and all that good stuff. So make sure to check him out as well at twitch.tv/3dog, 2 G's at the end. And yeah.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on the show, man. We really appreciate
Awesome,
it.
man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, dude.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.